Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank Prime for holding this seminar on an extremely important subject, and let me also welcome the former Finance Minister, Mr. Alexei, to Pakistan. I'm sure I will get various opportunities to interact with you and to learn from your experience, because as a minister of Mr. Shehbaz Sharif's government, we are cognizant of the fact that if this is to be the last IMF program, certainly we will have to change and reform, and more of the same would not work. So Georgia has indeed covered a lot of ground on the reforms. I've also interacted with your former Prime Minister, Nikolai, I think, if I'm remembering his name correctly. He's been to Pakistan in the last couple of months, and he's also met the Honorable Prime Minister of Pakistan, and we were exploring various areas of collaboration, because you have also been successful in overcoming another Achilles heels for our economy, which is the power sector. So we were working with the former Prime Minister of Georgia on that front, because I believe he's also been a power minister and all. So I once again welcome you on behalf of Ali and Prime Think Tank, and I look forward to working with you and building on your experiences for the benefit of Pakistan. The first thing that I would like to state is that, as I mentioned earlier, that the government is fully cognizant of the challenges that the country is faced with. It is not too far back in the past that we had our own sets of challenges, and we were struggling with the balance of payment crises. It was a time when our exchange, our foreign exchange reserves had depleted to a level of about 2 weeks of cover, and we had, our friend Mr. Mukarram is here. He's known authority on custom matters and everything, and Dr. Manzoor Saab is also here, who follows international trade clearly. He will bail me out in the sense that when the foreign exchange reserves had depleted to the level that I'm talking about, and this is not many years back, this is like a couple of years back. So we had more than tens of thousands of containers standing on our shores, and the country was struggling to retire those LCs in time, and there were numerous supply outages leading to skyrocketing inflation and disruptions in our trade, and this is not too far back. So the government fully realizes how this situation needs to be handled, and I think in the last year and a half, under the leadership of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and the present Finance Minister, the country has taken quite a lot of difficult decisions to bring in some sort of stability in our macroeconomic landscape. And as I stand today, I am pleased to say that although this stability has been achieved at a tremendous cost, because the common man has suffered, because we had a runaway situation with the inflation last year. In April, May, the CPI was around 40%. So you can imagine the kind of toll that the inflation caused on the purchasing power of the common man. The businesses were struggling with the supply outages, the plant utilization drops. There were a lot of redundancies. So, all this achievement of some sort of macroeconomic stability has come at a tremendous cost. So I realize that it is incumbent upon the government to not let this crisis, like previous crises, go to waste if we want to make IMF the last program. So that realization, at the highest level is definitely there, and we look forward to working not only with our friendly nations but also esteemed think tanks and people in the academia, whether it be PIDE or LUMS and other esteemed organizations and universities in Pakistan. So inshallah we plan to build on this stability. And the first thing I think that was essential was that we try to bring some sort of permanence to this macroeconomic stability, because this has been a chink in our armor for the last 70 years. So how did we do that? We engaged with the lender of last resort, and I don't say that as a medal of honor, but I say that as a matter of satisfaction, because that clean bill of health that was needed to finance our external account vulnerabilities was extremely important, and that is what has brought confidence into the economy. So when I stand here today, the reserves are at an all-time, not at an all-time high, but at a recent high of about $16 billion. Inflation, which last year was 40%, is now down to single digit. It's hovering around 7%. Pakistan bonds, which reflects the confidence that the lenders have on the path that the government is walking, has rallied from 40 cents to the dollar to about 95 cents, which is a huge improvement. The Karachi Stock Exchange is at an all-time high. Even today, I think it made a new record, and it's now touching 94,000 level. So what the point that I'm trying to make is that the stability, which has come at a great cost, is yielding early signs of recovery, but it is incumbent upon the intelligentsia of the country, on the government of the country, that we continue to work together and build on this stability and move towards a more inclusive, so that the dividends of the growth can be shared with the entire country, as opposed to just focusing on segments of the economy. We move towards a more inclusive, resilient, because today climate proofing is a huge subject, because it has implications not only for our urban cities. I don't know whether you would be going to Lahore today or not, but Lahore, which is the second largest city of Pakistan and a city from which I belong, is engulfed with thick smog, which is taking a huge toll on the productivity of the employees and on the upbringing and the health of the children. So we need to ensure that this paradigm shift that we need to make in order to build on this stability is focused more towards inclusivity, resilience and sustainability of the growth. So this is one thing that I would continue to seek your guidance on, because previously we've had sprouts of reform which we've not been sustained as a country, because we've been probably chasing a mirage or looking for a messiah and not been persevering on a particular path of reform. So what we need to do this time differently is sustain this reform path, rather than taking one step forward and two steps back, because reform is never easy. Reform, as you would bail me out, means immediate term pain for medium-term dividends. So if we want to make this the last IMF program, my only hope is that as a nation we are able to enrich the conversation that we are having within Pakistan on these important fundamental existential issues through initiatives like these, and build and move towards a more sustainable growth trajectory. So I look forward to that. On the subject at hand, so I agree, tax policy has a very instrumental role in orientating the economy in a particular direction. So the entire tax policy that we are working on will somehow try to reorientate the economy based on these three guiding principles that I've shared with you. And all these things about being on the wrong side of the Laffer curve, I accept that, but the thing is, unfortunately, there are practical compulsions also, because as a country, we have tried to explain to the world that we will lower the rates and try to increase the collections, but we have failed on that front, unfortunately. And you can divert and root the entire blame towards me, and I'm willing to take that. But as a country, we need to also understand that there is an international environment in which we are operating. So the realization has to be there, and there has to be a practical transition plan, because we have claimed this transition numerous times before, yet ended up with the 24th or the 25th IMF program. So we have to first show them that we are willing to walk this particular path, and I'm sure the world will also acknowledge the methodology behind the Laffer curve. So how we are going to do that? There is a huge digitalization initiative that is going on in FBR, and I am happy to share with you. Ali is also part of a few initiatives that we are trying to roll out there. It's not, and coming on, better targeting of potential taxpayers and increasing the reliance on direct taxes. That will follow once you have better visibility on the consumption patterns of individuals, because that is how you can use technology to take you and pinpoint you to the right people who should be in the tax net but are not in the tax net, and they should not have a license to continue to operate in the economy under the non-filer category which you were mentioning, and not be prosecuted against. So the point that I would like to make on that is that the whole concept of rolling out the non-filer category was probably missed in the last couple of years. The whole point of rolling out that non-filer category was to use that as a data source rather than a revenue spinner. So what has happened, and unfortunately this is what happens when practical compulsions push you in a particular direction. So you've started using that as a revenue source. So what is different this time, and what are we trying to do with the digitalization initiatives? We are trying to use that data point, that if a non-filer is doing all these transactions, if he's buying cars, if he's buying properties, if he's traveling abroad, if he's using his credit cards, if he's drawing profit on huge bank deposits that he's made, we will use this as a data point to, yes, collect a higher amount of tax, but at the same time, this data will be run through an analytics algorithm. It will be subject to a desk audit, and then this information will be sent to field offices, and those field offices will have to show progress on each and every case, which will be visible in the office of the chairman FBR through a digital dashboard. So, a lot of effort has gone towards obtaining and acquiring this data. Algorithms have been run. The first set of 200,000 individuals, extremely high net worth individuals. These are people owning 3 vehicles. These are people who are getting annual profit on their bank deposits of over ₹1 million. These are people who are spending credit card over 200,000 rupees a month. These are people who are sending their children to private schools. So the data has been gathered. We have done desk audit on the topmost 5,000 individuals, and I'm pleased to share here, you will see notices going out in the next couple of weeks on this front, but to give you some insight into the kind of tax potential that this will provide us is that these 5,000 individuals, when they were made subject to desk audit, the income associated with these 5,000 individuals was about 27 billion rupees. And the direct tax yield from these 5,000 individuals was estimated at something like 6-7 billion rupees. So we can say with a high level of confidence that if the 5,000 individuals that we subjected to for desk audit have thrown out this number, as we continue to reduce the thresholds for the transactions, this number will continue to increase and will provide us huge opportunity to go and prosecute them. So the purpose of the non-filer category, which was probably lost somewhere in the transition, would be salvaged, and we will now try to expand and broaden the tax net, inshallah. And once we are able to do that, it is only then that we can go to the world and say, look, this is what we are doing, trust us, we know what is best for our economy, and then they will be more accommodating. So this is the point that I wanted to make on the non-filer slide that you showed us, and I hope this will provide the audience with some sort of insight into the kind of activities that we are working on. The other huge initiative that we are working on is with Ali here, which is in the tobacco sector. Because of heavy taxation, again being on the wrong side of the Laffer curve, he knows this, Balke, he's the secretary of the committee also. He would confirm this to you, that more than half the cigarettes being sold in this country are illicit. So again, that is a that has a revenue potential. If you're able to get coverage over this grey segment, not only will it have positive externalities because of better health outcomes, but the revenue potential is how much, sir? 250 billion? That's the total size of the market. So you can't. So half of that, if 50% is the market, so that's the revenue potential that you're working on. So there are various interventions, and we are collaborating with the provincial governments, because at the end of the day, you can make and smuggle cigarettes discreetly, but eventually they have to be sold off the shelves. So you have visibility on that. The FBR has been very progressive in terms of installing a track and trace system on which you have an identifiable stamp on each and every packet. So for a law enforcing officer, whether it be of FBR or whether it be of a provincial authority, can go to the store and see whether the stamp is there. If the stamp isn't there, he can easily confiscate and fine it. But what is the problem? The problem is that Mr. Mukarram Jha's organization has only a few hundred people responsible for enforcement for a country of about 250 million people. So how do you work on a solution? You try to collaborate and work out a win-win solution with the help of the provincial governments. So that is what we are working on. So the government fully realizes that, and inshallah we will move towards balancing the imbalance incidence of taxation on certain segments. I don't want to go beyond that because I've already taken up a lot of time, but that will reflect to you what the government's priorities are, and we will continue to work on that. But equally important, although it might not be the topic of discussion today, is expenditure reform. So the objective, the only issue that I have with the banner is that tax, agreed, it's very important, and Pakistan is at the lower rung of the countries in terms of collections. But it is also one of the, it is a country with one of the highest expenditures to GDP number. So there's definitely more room for expenditure reform. And how you bring expenditure curtailment and efficiency. So I think the objective has to be fiscal consolidation as opposed to tax growth or expenditure reduction. So the culmination of that effort would be the fiscal consolidation part and ensuring that one of the reasons for that balance of payment crisis, which is a runaway fiscal deficit, we are in a better position to not only manage it, but also handle and finance it subsequently. So we are aware of that. So I think this should be enough food for thought on this subject. But at the same time, I think another important thing that we need to work on is that as we reorientate the economy towards a more private sector-led economy, one thing that we as a nation should also work towards is improving the regulatory capacity of our regulators, because as we reorientate and allow private sector a more enabling environment and a bigger share of the GDP, we must also guard against collusive behavior and market failure. So a lot of effort is going towards building the capacity in the regulators, whether it be the Competition Commission of Pakistan, whether it be the State Bank, whether it be NEPRA. Because had NEPRA been more forceful and forthcoming, maybe we would not have been challenged with the power sector situation, because it would have balanced the different interests of the stakeholders in a far more efficient manner. The same applies for OGRA. So we're all working on all these touch points of the economy, and in the end, while I thank Prime and especially Ali for giving me an opportunity to come and share with you the work that we have been doing in the last couple of months, I assure you the government will continue to move towards a path of more inclusive, resilient and durable and sustainable growth paradigm, and this time what should be different for Pakistan as a nation is that we are able to sustain this reform with a whole of the nation approach. So with that prayer, I look forward to continuing to work with all of you and seek your input and guidance on this transformational path. Thank you again, very kind of you. You're not interrupting me, I finished my thoughts.
Listen, why don't you just immediately eliminate the super tax which your party had put in place during the emergency of the balance of payments that we had 3 years ago? It's so easy to do it. Just get rid of the 10% super tax on income and the corporates and just get going. But you have to get the just get rid of the super tax, and please, I suggest that's a good start at the current situation where the tax is at which level. I mean, you're not going to be going down the Laffer curve at all. Just get rid of it. That's my suggestion.
Rizwan Sahab, I don't know whether I'm supposed to answer or not, but I can surely attempt to answer what you've asked. So when I say that we have to reorientate the economy towards a larger private sector presence, so I accept the point that you cannot have high taxation which transfers resources from the private sector to the public sector. So I accept that, and I understand that the banks are challenged with over 55% tax to effective tax rate, and that is hammering the capital formation in the private sector. So I own that. But I think I touched on this issue while I was speaking of reform and of being on the wrong side of the Laffer curve. Because today, and I'm going to share public numbers, so it's not as if I am going to make a revelation here in front of the cameras. We have to move and perform against certain targets if we want to remain in an IMF program. And I'm not disputing whether that ask is fair or unfair, but there is a particular path against which we have to deliver, and we are already struggling. And I've already acknowledged that we are on the wrong side of the Laffer curve. But if I take away this profitability tax, which is a tax on the profitability of companies which are highly profitable. I accept that this is an unreasonably high rate. So can you please suggest where I should park this collection and whose shoulders should I park this burden on? Because I don't want to go down the path of imposing more indirect taxation. So unfortunately, till we get the undertaxed and the untaxed through digitalization and what Professor Saab was mentioning, we can continue to desire and ask for the moon and the stars. I would be in a practical straitjacket, so I hope that addresses it. Thank you.